Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, December 28th. We're working our way towards the new year, and it seems to me like they've decided to put out a new expansion a little bit earlier. I guess it kind of makes sense if you're going to put out a new expansion somewhere near the new year. Why not do it Christmas Day or around Christmas Day? Although it seems like they probably didn't have this out exactly on Christmas Day. It's labeled as Eternal Awakening from the look of it, and we have these different kinds of weapons, although a harp is hardly usually a weapon. But that also certainly brings about some questions, certainly, is how are you going to integrate weapons into Shadowverse without adding a whole new concept? You see this is a medieval male and female character, which is standard male armor compared to the standard female armor in video games, and they have these giant swords, which Shadowverse, in its originality, did kind of love to give a huge amount. I forgot about the download. They gave a huge amount of focus on the dragon spear that the character drag spear had, and some of the other elements that were available, other weapons. Like almost every main character in the story did have a weapon. So if they're getting like refreshes in the newest story for new weapons, okay. The last expansion was this Wild West kind of gun centric story, so I could see a reason why you would want to go gun centric and then come out with some kind of magical bows and arrows and swords that are better than guns somehow. Since the story of this game in particular goes all throughout every type of timeline, it is going to be a bit of a struggle to justify why the fairy character, for instance, is still using a bow and arrow. Let's see, we've got some free crate things. We get a temporary deck, Eternal Awakening, temporary deck ticket, and then we've got some card packs, and we've got some more card packs. And so I guess we're going to start this stream just opening card packs. Normally I would make a big deal about this, certainly, but on it, if I was still playing Hearthstone, this would be the kind of video that you would kind of expect to make a big deal of it. We have been saving up our gold so we can get 50 packs, I think, fairly easily. The real question, I suppose, comes down to should we get 50 packs? Grand Blue Fantasy seems to be a tie-in. Is that the Eternal Fantasy? I don't know. I don't think I really buy that. Here we've got some characters that, yeah, they look fine. They don't quite exactly match the leaders' skins for some of the other expansions, but even Shadowverse, the anime, really didn't match the Shadowverse rebuild of characters. With it, even at that, you look at the rebuild and the redraw of these characters. That was the 4-year anniversary, and even that is not really as good as I would like it, and certainly nothing's going to stand out as bad as the Street Fighter characters that totally don't match. Yeah. So nothing there. But we did get a temporary deck ticket. So how do you do that? Deck. Rotation, we'll see. Now these are our decks that can't be used apparently. None of them can be used anymore. So, like, pre-built decks must be under here. Alright, so we have a Bloodcraft, Shadowcraft, Swordcraft, and Forestcraft deck without knowing anything at all I guess the question would be, which do I think is my worst deck? And I think Bloodcraft by far would be the worst deck, so let's just buy that. And then, of course, rotation, I guess. And save. Okay. So maybe there was a deck in that both in those temporary decks there was both an unlimited. No, I bet it's a case that since you're only getting new cards, you're only getting cards that would be able to be used in rotation, and they simply are asking the question is, do you want to use these rotation cards to expand upon it and make some changes and add some non-rotation things? Let's see. And as far as trading temporary cards, I could certainly obtain quite a bit. Now, very well, might be the time to do that. But see, here we are holding like 3, and here we're holding like 2. I guess there's no filter here. How much would each of these cost, though? Like, you're talking big money too, though. 3,500. So you could say, yeah, give me one here. So just so we do something with these, and one here. And let's see, is there a reason to have a trade here? Let's see, use. No, I don't see a reason to do that. And I don't know if there's a really good reason to do that. When you start to go down here, and we could say, give me one of these. And yeah, very quickly you're gonna run out of cards, and you really should be doing research there. Yeah, so plenty of cards still to collect as far as if you were trying to get cards, and temporary cards only help you so much, and they really don't help you that much at all. Alright. And then you have a purchase bonus of 1,000 gems that I'm not willing to spend money on. And then this. So let's start with 10. Since we've got 10 packs to start with. That's an easy decision, obviously. And the real question, this is a fancy new animation. The real question here is, do we want to put potentially 25 packs into the old expansion? Or do we want to just go with straight up new cards? Here we have one called Dragon Rearing, where it's apparently a lady washing a dragon, so that maybe gives us a theme that we're going into a dragon expansion. Here we have Archangel Remembrance. And see, it's all of this is
centuries pass, I remember all.
Interesting that it's in English on day one, because we've seen some expansions that aren't in English. Also, I would say that this feels like a art piece that's probably been a little bit more censored here. I could easily have seen that in an original Japanese form that this would have been very flesh tone and implied a lot of skin, inner thigh, and hips being shown. Although at this point, it seems like even the Japanese version of Shadowverse is getting more and more censored to be kid friendly, which you really couldn't have ever come to Shadowverse and said, hey, this is my game where all my lewd waifus are, unfortunately. Unlike the game that I like to play on my phone, Destiny Child, where they've definitely played up that aspect, and you can definitely have that experience. Or you could certainly get a mod for things like Hearthstone that would show straight up nudity. Here we've got another character that's riding a dog, it looks like. I should be looking at what these actually do, though. +1/+1 to a Dragoncraft follower. If overflow is active, give it +2/+2 and draw a card. Okay. Banish an enemy follower with 1 defense. Evolve, banish a card from your hand and put a copy of it in your deck. Draw 2 cards. That's an interesting concept that might work. Deal 1 damage to a random leader. Do this 3 times. Let's see. At the start of your next turn, draw a card. This is a Discerning Devil. Let's see. If Vengeance is active for you, you get Storm. If Avarice is, you get +2/+2.
Did someone call for a genius?
This is one of these voice actors that's, or voice lines that could get very annoying very fast. When you play a card using an accelerator effect for a second time this turn, invoke this card. That could be very useful. And it's an animated card too. Wow, on the first draw. And then I got a non-animated version of it. And then if any other allied followers are in play, destroy 1 and draw 2 cards. And this is the Psychopomp Tour Guide.
Ladies and gentle ghosts, follow me.
And see, this is a very anime, like, dark, twisted art style that does not really align at all with an art style like this, which is more of a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy art style. And that is something I think Shadowverse struggles with, is the fact that it is all over the place. Wow, we are doing good. Let's see, Fluffy Angel.
Give me all the fluffy hugs.
Let's see, and see, this is more of a cutesy moe style anime art style compared to the more edgy ghost girl art style we saw just before. This is Ward, Fanfare, and Last Words restore 2 defense to leader. We have Can't Attack. Once each turn, when the follower's attack and defense is increased by an effect, destroy a random enemy follower and restore 3 defense to your leader. At the end of your turn, if Avarice is active for you, gain +2/+2. This would be great if you could find a way to silence it, as it were. That's not a key phrase used in Shadowverse, but if we could find a way to make it so it could attack. I can't even really tell what I'm looking at here. Like, I see horns, I see a face, but I don't know if it's holding like a feather quill and writing, or what this is supposed to be. And then I don't know if it's writing on a book on its lap that I don't see, or what. Gluttonous, you'd almost think that he'd be eating something, but I don't see him eating anything. And they've got them so twisted as an image, and it's not very colorful. It's a lot of red tones there, which then you compare that to Wind Fairy here, which is more that edgy anime style too. It's like they hired 3 to 4 different animators to make different cards. Return an allied follower or amulet to your hand. Put a Fairy Wisp into your hand. Storm can attack twice. Okay, that's a new Forestcraft card. Here we've got a Fanfare Skybound Art 10. Summon Seox Heavenly Howl. Skybound Art 15. Summon 2 Seox Heavenly Howls. Strike, gain Storm, and the following effect: the next time this follower takes damage, reduce that damage to 0. Then remove this strike effect. Can attack 2 times per turn. This sounds insanely overpowered.
I can't keep running from my sins.
We don't know what Skybound Art is. Skybound Art effects activate if your turn number is equal to or greater to the Skybound Art value. Whenever allied follower evolves during your turn, the skybound art value of the cards in your hand decreases by 1. Interesting. And who is Seok 7 Liao? He's 6 play Bloodcraft follower with Rush. Which is this card. So it summons another one. So you can get 2 or 3 on the field, potentially on your 15th turn or earlier. Interesting. Here we have Crystallize Earth Sigil and summons a Guardian Golem when it dies, unless you don't crystallize it, and then you summons 2 Guardian Golems, and I think we've seen Guardian Golems before. 4 play point 3/3 with Ward. Yeah. So nothing super special there. Here we have a Blossom Treant, which back when I was playing Hearthstone, certainly they were called Trents, I think, just to be silly. Or maybe they originally in like Dungeons and Dragons were called Trent, and now they're all Treants. At the start of your turn, evolve this follower. Last words, draw a card. That's a pretty big deal, although at 4 cost, that's possibly a little too expensive. If at least 2 other cards in play this turn, gain +0/+5. Okay. And then
My domain reaches to the end of the skies.
we've got another animated card. Bane, selected enemy follower. It can't attack until the end of your opponent's turn. Evolve this follower and give +2/+2 to all allied followers if it's been your 10th turn. And then strike, deal X damage to all enemies. X equals this follower's attack. So if you could power this up, you might do massive amounts of damage. Otherwise, you're just going to do 3. I almost don't want to talk about the accountability section for this weekend. Like, surely it is still just the holidays, so I don't feel bad that I didn't really accomplish much, but I took several steps back as far as I'm concerned on my server, and that's pretty much all I did. And at the moment, it's just not working at all. My Nextcloud install, I've pretty much lost it, and I'm gonna have to reinstall it, and I've tried to reinstall it several times. It's a half-step process, certainly, where we're trying to I'm trying to make sure that it would install a new fresh install automatically, and also trying to have a more customized setup install running at the same time, and those are contradictory. I decided, and perhaps stupidly, to just go ahead and get off CentOS and move back to Debian. Just straight up Debian, not Linux Mint Debian Edition or anything like that. Which there's still a lot of things that have to be installed manually, and I can't install with Docker. So that's still in the works. And Docker, as supposedly a deployment service, isn't really working as greatly as I would like it to. It didn't just work, but I've also made a lot of changes. The main part is that the web server Nginx is... I completely replaced the container that ran that with a new version, or a alternate version called Swag, which is for like secure web access gateway or something like that, which includes more customization and perhaps does it a little bit better. It still does Let's Encrypt and makes a certificate, but it also includes fail to ban. And so theoretically this is the right way to go and the right improvement, but it changed basically everything, as the web server was the backbone of all the other reverse proxied web servers. And some of them worked just fine with the switch over. Some of them certainly, like Nextcloud, gave me all kinds of trouble. And frankly, it was just a matter, I think, of needing a fresh install. So, yeah, it didn't. No progress was really made other than I installed Debian instead of CentOS, which moving over to Debian did get rid of security enhanced Linux, which I'm fine with that. There's alternatives. You could turn on SE Linux in Debian. It's not on by default. You could turn on a different option called App Armor, but both of those systems, frankly, were just making little problems here and there, little frustrations where it would add an extra bit of hours of work trying to figure out what was going on. In theory, yes, you could. You should use the most tightened down, lockdown server software, but in practicality, when you're trying to develop, it just gets in the way. Unfortunately, Docker Compose also does not really support the settings for security enhanced Linux if you don't have security enhanced Linux installed and enabled. So I had to go and change the entire configuration file for no real reason, when it would have been super logical for Docker Compose to simply said, this compose file references security enhanced Linux options, but you don't have security enhanced Linux enabled. Instead, it gives you this error that's just kind of pointless. And in part of the process of moving over to Swag, and I'll quickly wrap up here as far as the accountability section because I don't think anybody cares. I looked at a bunch of reverse proxy pre-made configuration files, which then pointed me to a lot more servers. So I am now trying to install even more things, and so I just added more experiments to my plate, and some of them are fine, some of them are like the right way to move. I'm trying to use NAG iOS instead of Cacti, which seems to be more industry standard as far as a monitoring software. I'm thinking about using a software called Ubiquity, instead of Calibre for ebooks, because it also handles comic books differently, whereas Calibre doesn't really offer that, although I'm not sure Ubiquity allows the conversion like Calibre did. There's some other softwares I think I'm moving around and trying some different things with, things that I'd like to have. It took me forever, but I finally did get my UPS battery backup to work. Turned out that the passwords cannot have the number sign in it, so I had a fairly complex password that had a number sign in it, and the number sign often means a comment, and so some part in the internal code was translating the comment sign to break the configuration. And so that is kind of ridiculous, because that bug that I finally figured out was one of the major factors as why I decided to move away from CentOS back to Debian, although it doesn't really matter because CentOS is dead, as it were, so it was going to happen anyways, but that's really frustrating. I also found out that the logging driver that sends the logs from Docker, when I'm trying to send it to a remote server, a remote syslog server, it cannot get the security files, the certificate file and the key file, from relative locations, whereas every other part of the Docker Compose file totally can use relative locations. So you'd have that file in your in a folder, and you would reference a bunch of subfolders in that folder full of settings, and that's been the whole process that I've been doing. Well, that doesn't work for the syslog driver options, so I had to put fully fleshed out, full length descriptions of where the configuration files are, and once I did that, everything started to work, which, okay, that's great and all, but that's also fairly frustrating. That two of the major problems that I've been running into for weeks have been literally just, oh, you can't type it this way, and oh, you can't use that password because it has a number sign in it. Those are very low level errors that really suck, because that doesn't point to a big revelation when you figure it out. It just points to the fact that there's a lot of software out there, both open source software and otherwise, that's just really bad at giving feedback and explaining it. And like they will give errors, but often the errors don't make any sense. Um, because if they say they can't access a file, and you're thinking to yourself they should be able to access a file, it's very easy to say, well, um, if I typed it in right, and if I know that file is in there, it must be some other error that's wrong, or it must be a permission issue or something along that line. So yeah, I'm not making any progress, which sucks because I definitely wanted to. I needed to start scheduling things. Uh, I even got a tray out to put my keyboard on my bed so I could just lie in bed and type in and schedule videos, and I didn't actually do any of that because of course, why would I do that? I hate scheduling so much, but I need to do it desperately. I've got so many videos that are just sitting on my YouTube channel that haven't been scheduled to actually be released. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and not a lot of motivation at the moment. It's still cold and dark, and not 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 a high priority, not fun certainly to schedule videos. Anyway, sorry for taking a break there while we were doing this. I should have focused more on this. Um, we have subtract 1 from the cost of this card every time it's spell boost, so we have a standard spell boost card.
Monsters come in every shade imaginable.
Let's see. If you discard any cards, let's try and evolve this card. Bane. There does seem to be kind of a fantasy twist on a lot of this. Put a fairy in your hand. But I'm not 100% sure that this isn't going to just be another world in the Shadowverse universe where there's a little bit of everything. They've done pretty well in the past couple of expansions where they pretty much tried to only have 2 themes. But this feels like they're going to get back to having magic and sword and sorcery, and maybe less technology this time. Restore 1 defense to all allies. If Avarice is active, deal 1 damage to enemy leader. Crystallize, countdown 7 at the start of your turn. Restore 1 defense to your leader. If you have more evolution points than your opponent, subtract 1 from the enemy's countdown. If you have 0 evolution points on your turn, if you're unable to evolve, then it summons this Xeno Diablo, which is a 10-2 with less hordes. If Vengeance is active for you, deal 4 damage to all enemies. If Avarice is active for you, deal 4 damage to all enemies. If Wrath is active for you, deal 4 damage to all enemies. So theoretically, this could die and do 12 damage to all enemies. That's pretty massive, particularly if you can get that on the 3rd turn. We've seen this one before. Here we have Kitty Cat Arsenal. Deal 3 damage to an enemy follower, and then 2 damage to a random enemy follower, and that's a spell card, which, we don't see a lot of spell cards, frankly. It is few of them. Like, almost always it's a character. To the point where if you'd asked me just a second ago, does Shadowverse have spell cards, I would have to thought hard about it. Deal X damage to the enemy follower. X is the number of times this card has been spell boost. If X is at least 10, deal 4 damage to enemy leader. We've seen this one. Here we have a cat guy, I think.
Oh, are you in need of medicine?
Yeah, you don't see a lot of this either. The more skinny, kind of effeminate male characters. Necromancy 6, Reanimate 4. Then Crystal Witch we've seen, but an animated version. And we have Rush, deal X damage to enemy leader, X equals the follower's attack. This is a kind of character you would kind of expect from more of a kid's anime. Just a monstrous type character that really stands out because you don't see a lot of that. Here we have another monster-like character, so maybe that's what they're trying to throw in here. And we've seen golems before, but even the golems in the past have been fairly cutesy and anime-ish. Of course, Shadowverse, almost more than any other card game, could easily re-release cards and change the art style without changing how the cards actually play. Excuse me. Of course, at a certain point, there is a element where cards from even different card games are pretty much all the same. If they do basically the same thing, you really are just deciding on an art form. It would be very easy to steal all the concepts and all the card play abilities in Magic the Gathering and put different art on it. And certainly there might be a lawsuit there, but you might actually not lose that lawsuit inherently. Because I don't think you can really copyright concepts, and that's where these abilities would fall, I think, fairly easily. Is concepts. Simple concepts can be copyrighted. So now we're starting to see some repeated content. At the end of your turn, put a random dragon craft follower that costs 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10 points from your deck into your hand. It's not terrible. Particularly if you have a whole bunch of cards that are even, and then just 10 play points. Like, in fact, that would be exactly how you'd use a card like this, is have only 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 cards, and then the 10 card you want to play. And then on the 5th turn you play this, and you pull out that 10 card. If you play the card using Accelerate a second time, we've already seen that one. Starting to see some repeats. I should have kept opening because I could have been, at a certain point when I first started opening these packs, hitting the server just at the right time to get bigger draws, but maybe not. Let's see, summon a mechanized soldier, summon 2 instead, summon 3 and give all the ability to evolve for 0 points.
Commencing mission.
And see, like, robotic mechanized armored soldiers seems like a mess of a characterization, but that seems like what they might be trying to do here is throw in the idea of some sci-fi on top of some sword and sorcery sword characters. Of course, Psychopomp Tour Guide still really just stands out, particularly when you look at like the outfit. Like, this is clothing that looks very, very modern and just out of place for the time area at all. Then you have Enhance 5, Evolve this follower, Master Sleuth.
Anyone call for a super sleuth?
I'd say his hand here is oddly drawn. It's a little big, but I'm not going to try and get too picky on the art style. Vicious Grappler, give all allied followers in the following effect: clash, deal 2 damage to an enemy leader. Okay, that could be very useful. We have a winged zombie. That's an interesting idea. When you perform necromancy, gain storm. And then next time this follower takes damage, reduce it to 0. Strike +1 +0. Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to make a decision here fairly quickly as far as whether or not I want to open a bunch of more packs for the old expansion or whether I want to open a bunch of packs for the new expansion. Let's see. Put a puppet in your hand, give a random puppet in your hand, evolve this follower when it's played. So we're getting more puppet cards, although this art definitely is not in line with the other puppeting cards we've seen. So it definitely feels like a break. Here we have another mermaid, which I think they'll always throw in a couple of mermaids. Once each turn, when this follower takes damage, if it's not destroyed, deal 2 damage to a random enemy follower. Seems like mermaids in this game in particular tend to have 0 attack. Let's see, Belfry Sister, gain the ability to evolve for 0 points. If there are any allied amulets in play, deal 4 damage to an enemy follower. Okay, that might be useful, but probably not. If this follower is 2 defense or less, whenever an allied follower attacks, deal 2 damage to an enemy leader. Interesting. There might be some way you could reduce its damage to 2, reduce its health to 2, and then stop it from taking damage, and then have a lot of people try and attack it because it has a ward. But honestly, you'd probably have to play 3 or 4 cards to pull something off like that. We have a freewheeling lass.
We doing this?
Was not expecting that.
Move. Wah wah. We doing this?
Wow, that's definitely not what I was expecting when I saw a little elf girl. If at least 2 other cards were in play, summon Stumpy Eye. Stumpy Eye has a 4/1 rush, gives +1 to an allied millennial freewheeling lass. I wonder if this is supposed to be millennial, which maybe that is what it is. This is a joke on millennials. Oh, we're starting to see repeats. It definitely feels like when they come out with these expansions, they don't give you that many cards to start with, and then they do the weird, we're going to add more cards later trick, which seems weird, certainly. Put 2 grand auctions in your hand.
How about a stone for the road?
Grand auction is a 1 play point spell card. Discard a card from your hand and draw a card. Put in Agrarian weaponry in your hand. Age-worn weaponry. Yeah, so age-worn weaponry apparently are going to be spell-summoned weapons. If this really gave weapons to the leader, like Hearthstone has, that would be a nice twist. I don't think Hearthstone ever really fully was able to embrace weapons for the leaders either, but it's an interesting idea. Let's see, evolve this follower. If Resonance is activated, gain the ability to attack 2 turns.
Let me initiate you in the art of the spin blade.
Let's see. If Overflow is activated for you, last word, summon a hypersonic dragon oot. Yeah, is that dragon newt? Yeah, I suppose. Drago newt. If an enemy followers are in play, lose 1 play point. And evolve this follower. Clash -2, -0 to the enemy follower.
I'll show you the meaning of love.
Ladiva, champion of love. We've got an animated version of the Raging Rhino. And another one of these. Let's see. What's new? Man, I've kind of blanked. We have a bunny-eared character, which does a really big bunny ears. which seems a little off. Restore 2 defense to your leader. Deal 1 damage to enemy follower and 1 damage to enemy leader, and then restore 1 defense to your leader. Then it goes to 2, and then it goes to 4, and you get +2/+2 instead if you enhance with 5.
It looks like I'm up.
I wish a lot of these voice lines were more interesting, but they really aren't that good. Here's an interesting point to notice here is that in the past when we've seen like the priest symbol, it's always been the Shadowverse symbol, and the priest would have like those kinds of symbols on candles and staffs and things like that. They seem to have pulled very much away from that. And so here we have like a unicorn altar, and you have a like priest nun looking outfit and just regular candles. Fanfare, put a unicorn in your hand. At the end of your turn, subtract 1 cost from the random unicorn in your hand. Less words deal 4 damage to your enemy follower. Unicorn is a 6-play 5/5. I feel like we've had unicorn cards, but they haven't been specifically called unicorns. We've looked at that one. I think we've looked at that one. We've definitely looked at that one. Redeemer's Cudgel. Whenever you play an amulet, subtract 1 cost from this card. Banish an enemy follower. This might be a war-worn weapon. Maybe not. I wouldn't be surprised if all the weapons are just spells, as a way of bringing in more spells. Deal 1 damage to enemy follower and 1 damage to enemy leader. If you have 20 or less cards in your deck, deal 3 damage instead. That's a slightly different card. And then, what else is new? Deal 1 damage to an enemy. If this card has been spell boosted at least 5 times, put an impalement arch into your hand and give the following effect at the end of your turn. Discard this card. So you can play 2 of them. But that's pretty much it, because then the next time you played Impalement Arts, it would not have been spell boosted 5 times. Not likely, at least. Like, I mean, I suppose if you had 10 mana, or you reduced the cost of all spell cards in your hand, then you might be able to pull something off like that, but then you would need a ton of cards in your hand, because you'd have to play this, and then you'd have to play 5 other cards, and 5 other spell cards, and then play this. See, we have a Skullfish. Necromancy 2, deal 2 damage to the enemy leader. Which this definitely looks like a sandworm with skeletons instead. And honestly, this feels like this is more from the Western storyline, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's still some cards coming out from the Western storyline. So that gave me 3 emblems. Okay. And with tickets, I have 4 more. So let's buy those. I'm taking an incredibly long time here. And I don't have a really good system to speed up things, unless I just decide to not look at any of the new games. It's not like there's any new news as far as video games today, but as far as I've seen, but yeah, unless I just skip all the new games that came out on Steam, there's no way to speed up this process. Other than the standard, don't meander and talk and actually play the game. We've got Shark Warrior, discard a card, restore 4 defense to your leader, enhance gain +2/+2, and draw a card. Then we've had this one, and this one, and this one. And I'm fairly certain we've used that one, that one, that one, and that one. So these are all repeats. Let's see. Animated version of this. And We had that one. Is this new? Honestly, if it was new, they would be telling me, wouldn't you? Wouldn't they? At the end of your turn, rally 10. Give your leader the following effect. The next time your leader takes damage, reduce it to 0. Yep, okay. Now we would be getting a new animation. Let's see. Got 2 of those. And this isn't new either. None of these are new, I don't think. Well, actually, these 2 do look new. Summon a bullet bike. Yeah, this definitely feels like characters from this previous Western story. So I wouldn't be surprised if the new story that happens, the next chapter, is still taking place in part in the Western world. Once on each of your opponent's turn, when they play a card, put a paradigm shift into your hand as a surveillance system. That could be interesting. And then that's maybe useful. Burial Right, gain the ability to evolve for 0 points. And see, the thing here, got another gluttonous dragon, demon, which seems to be important. And this seems to be new. It feels like they've changed the way things work now. And so now when they're glowing, they're new cards. But this isn't a new card, so I don't even know what that really means. Maybe it just means that they're only going to highlight silver and better cards and have them glow. Put a random officer follower from your deck into your hand and give it +2/+2. Crystallize 3, countdown 4. At the start of your turn, if you have more evolution points than your opponent, subtract 1 from this amulet. At the end of that, you summon this character. It can evolve for 0 points. At the end of your turn, restore 4 to this follower. Whenever this follower takes damage, if not destroyed, give it the following effect until the end of your opponent's turn. Can't be attacked. So, theoretically, this card could stay on the field a little bit longer. So that gives me another thing. Okay. And so really, a pack of 8 includes at least 1. And like looking at the tradables now would be fairly silly. But apparently I did craft some of those cards already. Perhaps to the point where crafting some of these cards actually did help me get more of these cards. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It seems like 17 cards there. So I could pour a lot into Fortune's Hand and just open like 60 packs or 50 packs on Fortune's Hand right now. But I don't think that's quite right. I think we should probably try and stay a little bit further ahead, particularly now since we're starting to see how Storm of Revile and Fortune's Hand particularly are starting to get long in the tooth. Like it doesn't feel like it makes a lot of sense to potentially have this filled out so that you could trade, to then just find out that the trades honestly don't even matter because they don't keep you, that you could only play them in unlimited. So let's go with 10 here, and we'll open this and we'll see if we get anything new, which almost certainly we won't. And then we'll go open 10 there. So let's just go ahead and skip just to save time. So you have like 1 new card here, which, okay. And then one new animated card here. And then silver-wise, nothing. And then bronze-wise, nothing. So, yeah. And that just gets you a little bit closer. And then let's go ahead and get 10 packs here and pay attention to it, since these are likely to give us new cards. And there's really not a solution here for the middle cards, really. Like the expansions between the one that I'm closest to having 400 to get trades so we can figure out what trades really mean, and the expansion after that, and the expansion after that. If I had unlimited money, it would make a lot of sense to me to just buy a whole bunch of packs for a lot of the old expansions, at least until the point where I feel like I have one of everything. So let's see. You've seen that, and that. Let's see. I think we have Tempest Dragon. Yeah, we've seen that. This may be new. Give +1/+1 to all allied followers. Gain 0 evolution points. It does feel like a lot of these cards are getting a little bit power creepy too. Not super surprising. 5 years or 4 years into an expansion card game. If Overflow is active for you, gain the following effect. Whenever this follower takes damage equal or greater to its defense, survive on 1 defense. Deal 2 damage to all enemies. Gain the ability to attack 3 times per turn. Yeah, another card that on the 15th turn could potentially win the game. And I think there's an intentional move here to try and speed up the gameplay so you don't get into 20 plus turns games as much. Next time this follower damages, reduce damage to 0. Okay. Anything new here? This might be new. Can't be targeted by enemy effects. Last word summons another character of the same. Let's see. Then that, and that, and that, and that, and that. We've already seen. Then we have an animated version of that. And an animated version of this. It probably is a true fact that I could go through and dust a lot of the non-animated versions of cards. At a certain point, you'd almost have to have a complete collection. I don't think any of these are new at all. Well, this might be. Here, you have a lady fully clothed in a bathtub, which is frankly a little bit weirder than her not being fully clothed. Catherine Night Smoke.
It'll all vanish like smoke in the night.
Put one of the following cards in your hand. Gilded Goblet, Gilded Boots, Gilded Necklace. That's new. I think this is new too. Follower has 2 defense or less. Whenever the allied follower attacks, deal 2 damage to enemy leader. The problem is none of these cards are like game breaking synergies. One of the things I liked about a lot of the Hearthstone expansions is, and Magic tried to do this, but I don't think succeeded anywhere as well. Hearthstone expansions definitely would add 2, maybe 3 keywords to really focus on in every expansion, and they'd focus at least half of all the cards around those new keywords and gameplay methods. And so you really were pushed in a direction to say, this is the kind of deck you're going to build. Now, in all fairness, that very well may have caused the situation where a lot of people were just net decking and playing the exact same decks over and over again on Magic. But that was appreciated, whereas a lot of the expansion cards we've seen so far, I don't really know the reason for their existence or if they really do synergize. Like this one enhances for 6 and evolves it and then recovers 4 play points, which that's on the face of it obvious what it does, but how does that really synergize with anything else? Deal 1 damage to all allies and enemies and then do that twice. Like there literally was a card like this in Shadowverse that in Hearthstone that did the exact same thing. Of course, that's not super unique concept. Let's see, so we've seen all of these, right? And it seems like the game does like to give me a non-animated version than an animated version fairly quickly after it. 2 golds. The real smart move would be to go and look at the list of this new expansion and just figure out how far we have to go as far as things. This Wicked Wolf, I don't feel like I've seen this. Summon 3 Wicked Wolves, give all the Wicked Wolves reduce the damage from effects to 0. Yeah, everything's fresh and new when you first start opening packs, but then eventually you start to see the repeated stuff, and this might be new. If Rough is not activated, deal 1 damage to your leader, otherwise gain +2/+2 in Rush. I feel like that's very similar to other vampire Bloodcraft cards, but that may not be a big deal. Also, because I bought that temporary deck, you apparently, like, just... I probably have a lot of cards already. Temporary decks are confusing in the sense that you can keep them forever, same as temporary cards. And temporary deck is just a collection of cards, but you can't trade them or dust them, which isn't really that big of a problem, frankly. Because if you then end up with non-temporary versions of cards, you could trade and dust those. So there's seemingly never going to be a system where you could even trade a temporary card back for gems, even if you lost gems in that transfer. Destroy an enemy follower, restore X defense to your leader, and draw X cards. Okay. Undead Parade. This is another one of these pictures that seems very off, with goofy ghouls and ghosts and skeleton animals. And it's kind of hard to even tell what you're looking at if you're not able to figure out that this is a big purple ghost. Burial Rite summon 2 skeletons. That's also a little weird, is that you'd have this art and then just summon 2 skeletons when we know Ghost exists as cards in this game, but they don't really even look like that. Alright, so let's take a moment, as this is going on forever, to say, alright, if we were to liquefy extra cards, we've got a decent amount that would give us a decent amount of things. And then if we go into create cards, and then we filter ourselves to just the new expansion, we've got 1 here, and 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. So, yeah, let's get a general idea of the percentage of cards there still are to get. Remember that also, a card like this, you may have 2 copies of it, but you don't have any animated versions of it, so if you just pour more money into the expansions, you will just constantly get more animated versions. So there's weirdly still more to buy. Alright, bronze. it would make a decent amount of sense to make sure we have all the bronze cards, but now is not the time to do that. And if I was going to go that route, then there's seemingly quite a lot of bronze cards that I've not gotten around to crafting lately, or if I've crafted them, I haven't crafted 3 copies of them. So way to let's see. No, there really isn't. So I would have to go through this whole list, and that's definitely something I would do off screen if I ever bothered to spend some free time on this, is to just spend all these vials and craft all the bronze cards. If I could use vials to buy packs, I'd be much happier with that, even if that was a worse gamble, as it were. I would definitely be much happier with the idea of gambling for we can basically expect that we'll have opened 150 packs by the time this new expansion is done. And some of these other ones we've not gotten anywhere close to that. So let's do this. Then go ahead and just skip. See, gold. Nothing new. But we do have a new animated here. And then that. And then that. Okay. Let's open another 10 packs here. There's still a decent amount of stuff to get. And it would be a shame if I literally didn't have a decent collection of the new cards. Let's see. Recover X play points equals this follower's attack. That's like the 3rd one of those we've had. Rest of these we've already done. Nothing new on that draw at all. That's new. So I guess the glowing doesn't really indicate anything other than its rarity. Next time this follower takes damage, reduce the damage to 0. If it's the 10th turn, deal 11 damage to an enemy follower. If it's the 15th turn, give all other allies the following effect to reduce damage taken by 1. I don't know if that's really worth it.
Threat looms over all the skies.
Actually, this is a pretty good card. I don't like this animation at all. But this... because it's like a guy with a mustache, and then he's got like a long ponytail, which would make sense in like Asian cultures for not blonde-haired people to have long ponytails, but also just seems weird, very weird looking character and out of place. Yeah, this could be a great card though. You play this on the 2nd turn. It's a 1/1, not too bad. You draw it at the 10th turn, then you do 11 damage extra. You don't have to sit on a card like this really. You play it on the 15th turn, and then you get that extra ability, which isn't that great, but it's better than nothing. Nothing new there. Nothing new there. Starting to get decent amounts of repeats, which I guess that's at least ensuring we have 3 copies of the same things. Which, okay. Here we have 10th turn, deal 3 damage to the leaders. 15th turn, deal 6 anymore. Again, this is a card that you don't have to really sit on, but you can use it. It's more beneficial later on, which a lot of the cards in Shadowverse kind of suck because they are 9th, 10th turn cards that you have to sit on and wait, and you can't really play them. Might be a new animated version of that, or that. I kind of wish Shadowverse would drop the animated version of things in general. That would make it a lot easier to get cards. If Overflow is activated for you whenever this follower takes damage greater to its survive. We have this, but I think this is an animated version of that. Deal X damage to any follower. X equals the last digit of your leader's defense. Interesting. So you could do maybe 9 damage. Or maybe 0 damage. For 1 mana though, that certainly is an interesting trick. Animated version of this. Animated version of this. No. This is a great example of it's flashy enough that it looks like it might be animated, where this is not so flashy and it is animated. There we go. And so we've got about 10 more. So do I want to buy 10 more here? Or do I want to buy 10 more here? I think I want to buy 10 more here. Interesting that I got a new card in the old expansion. Let's see. Reduce damage from effects to 0 when an allied officer comes into play. Gain the ability to evolve for 0 evolution points. I was supposed to skip. Yeah. Well, so I got 2 new legendary cards by doing that. And I got a new animated card. Silver tier. And then just a whole lot of cannon fodder, for lack of a better term. Right, we also have 5 packs here, so we might as well open these. And since we only have 5, we might as well go through it. Although, in all fairness, the odds of me getting anything great from the second to latest expansion is not really high. The constant push for buying cards certainly and getting more cards in collectible card games certainly is a potential turnoff for anybody, including me. Like I could certainly see an argument that if somebody was to say, well, here's a deck building game where you don't get any new cards except for once a year, and that's just a bit of DLC for $20, and you can grind out over the course of the year to get to earn all those cards, so it's actually free. I could see that appeal, certainly. Of course, that is a different scenario for the creators of the game, who need somebody potentially to buy cards, otherwise they're not making any income at all. And that's certainly where things like Artifact tried to be its own different type of experience, because they were trying to push this idea that you could just pay one time and that would be that. Right, so what I think we do is we create one of everything. That way we just have one of everything. And we'll see if we can pull that off. How am I missing proven methodology? Because I have like 2 animated versions of it. See, and that's kind of a waste of vials, frankly, to do that, but So what we probably wouldn't want to do is start with the bronze, because I don't think we can actually craft everything. I bet I don't have enough vials to start crafting some of these top tier cards. Well, that's crazy card. At the end of your turn, if you have 10 play point orbs, subtract 10 from the cost of this card. Accelerate 1, draw a card. If you have more evolution points than your opponent, summon a Mega Lork. Give -X to all enemy followers. X equals your remaining play points. Followers are destroyed when their defense drops below 0. So honestly, if you had this in your hand and you had 10 play points for 2 turns, it would be free. It would be a 0 cost card. There's probably a better system here. At the end of your turn, if you have 5 cards in play and at least 15 shadows, change the cost of this card to 0. When this card comes into play, perform the Necromancy 20 to evolve this. At the end of your turn, banish all enemy followers and amulets. Is there a filter here for missing? Nope. During your turn, whenever an allied artifact comes to the play, give it rush and recover 1 play point. Artifact follower. Fanfare plus X and storm to another random enemy. X equals the number of artifact cards with different names destroyed this match. Interesting. Next time this follower takes damage, reduce the damage to 0. Summon by Zay. Evolve all uninvolved by Zays. And give an allied follower the following effect. At the end of your turn, restore 2 defense to enemy follower. That's a by Zay. This card. At the end of your turn, give an allied fully retired sovereigns. The next time this follower takes damage, reduce its damage to 0. Interesting. So they synergize those 2 cards too. Give your leader the following effect once each of your turns. When you play a card, recover 2 play points and add 2 to the number of cards played this turn. Evolve, recover 2 play points. Although the number of cards played this turn is not a metric that I think gets used that much. Let's see. Once on each of your turns, whenever you play a follower, give it +1/+0. At the start of your turn, if you have more evolution points than your opponent, subtract 1 from this amulet. Last word summons a copy of this character. See, we may have just enough vials to have 1 copy of everything in this expansion, which is fine, but then the question would be, do you now go back to the previous expansion and try and craft all those cards? And you probably do. When this amulet is returned to your hand, draw a card. Change the defense of all enemies to 1. Strike, deal 1 damage to all enemy followers. When followers return to your hand, deal 1 damage to all enemy followers. That sounds like a interesting card. Let's see. Deal X damage to an enemy leader. X equals the follower's attack. And Clash gives it +1/+1. We do have a case here where the text still is kind of in the way, where I feel like there was a probably better way to organize this screen. I know a lot of their focus probably is to get the cell phone version of the screens to work too, but put a random card with enhanced or super skybound art from your deck into your hands. Skybound art. Super skybound art is different from skybound art apparently. Evolve an uninvolved allied swordcraft follower. Evolve effects will not activate for them. Yeah, the super skybound art is the extra expensive one. Give the following effects, reduce damage to its follow to 0, can't be destroyed by effects. Wow. So this card literally makes makes itself like immortal. Just almost impossible to just be destroyed. If at least 2 other cards were played during this turn, evolve this follower as a ward, and then strike, restore 2 defense to your leader during when you draw a card. And unless these cards get cheaper, I'm gonna run out of vials. Let's see. The +2 +0 in Storm on the 10th turn draws a card normally when played. This is a weird card because clearly you have one of these comic book poses where they have twisted the character so you can see all of the face, some side boob, while also showing the entire back, while also heavily emphasizing the buttocks. I don't know why Shadowverse wouldn't have drawn that picture and that pose at all when they were moving in the other direction. It seems like somebody got their lines crossed, or this is art that was in development for a long time, because it just doesn't really make sense to have a cheesecake image like this where when they've already been doing censoring. Let's see. See what else have we got. We've got Tri-Headed Hound, which is a very different looking dog than Cerberus, as how we've seen it before, where Cerberus was the anime dog girl with the 2 hand puppet to be the other dogs. They've definitely gone in a different direction, although they're not specifically calling this Cerberus. Summon a 5 play point, attack 2 attack Tri-Hound with the following effects. Summons a 7 play point, 3 attack Tri-Hound without last awards. Interesting, so it summons something that then summons something with last awards. Give another allied follower the following effects. Summon a copy of this follower. 10th turn, summon copies of 2 random allied followers with different names destroyed this match that cost at least 5 play points. 15th turn, give +5/+5 to all allied followers and restore 5 defense. Once again, just a great card to play on the 3rd turn, or wait and play it much later if you draw it much later. Here we have Lunaloo Fangirl A,
Where can I find inspiration?
which has a last words to put a facsimile in your hand. What's a facsimile? It's this. Put a copy of a random ally followed played this turn.
Harulu, you're so warm. A mask, and what lays beneath? A double delight.
See, this is seeming like this is just a otaku animator obsessive fangirl character, which definitely feels out of place for Shadowverse. Like we really haven't had Shadowverse mention the anime or obsessive fandom for animation in general has existed. If anything, it's been very much implied that there's basically no animation that exists in the worlds that we've visited and seen. Let's see. Until the end of your opponent's turn, give -4/-0 to a random enemy follower with the highest attack in play. 10th turn, deal 4 damage to a random enemy follower, do that 3 times. 15th turn, give all allied followers the ability to attack 2 times this turn. Wow. It's just a lot of really cheap cards here. They definitely want to speed up the flow of games which is a right move for almost every collectible card game. Give +1/+1 and Bane to all allied followers on the 10th turn. It has Ambush and Ward. Remove Ward from all enemy followers and give them the following effect until the end of the turn that they can't attack. Nice. Of course, look at my vial count now. We're down to 1900. So I can only possibly create a couple more things. Till the end of your opponent's turn, give all allies the following effect: reduce damage from effects by 2. And this was the card that we already had, but we only had one copy of. And then we just completely lucked out there. Totally lucked out. So if I was to go here and any, and then look, we really don't have enough vials to do much of anything. I hate the buttons system. It doesn't work. The mouse wheel works better. You'd think that'd be the exact opposite. So we have like 3 copies of these. So what do? You liquefy 3 of these and you get back 10 vials. Does that really make sense? And then why do we have 3 copies of them? Because we bought that temporary deck. If that were the case, then why didn't we liquefy the extras at that point? I suppose if we were to find a deck like that, like it does go to point out that if you just bought all the pre-built decks, I think you probably would have all the cards. 3 copies of every card and at least 1 copy of every top tier card, if not the 2 maximum copies of the platinum cards that you can normally have. We may be back. So like if I was going to do this and try and create animated versions of it, maybe that would make some sense. Like, yeah, I could use a Seer's Orb here to take one of my cards and shift it over. I don't think I've ever done that, and I have 10 of them, so maybe we should find a nice top tier card to do that with, not those by any means. But otherwise, it seems like we do have all the bronze cards, at least 1 copy of each bronze card, which is probably about as much as you want. Like if you really wanted the cards and were really going to play with them, that might mean something more. Inherently, though, the problem with this is if I had a big old collection that was 66 pages with 16 cards, different unique cards on each page, so 66 times 16 times potentially somewhere between 1 or 3 copies of each card, that would be a massive card collection without actually doing the math. But there's just not a good not as good of a feeling as you would have if those were real and printed out things. In fact, I would be even willing to pay a reasonable fee to have a digital collection like this turned into physical cards. But I don't know how you could get into actually printing cards and make them relatively reasonable unless you get somebody like the printer companies to subsidize it so that you're buying ink, because that would be a genius thought, is if the printer companies shipped you entire pieces of ink and hard card stock. honestly, even if you did that though, the printing methods to get holograms and to get more artsy and glossy pictures and make it look really good is just not within the capability of what a home printer could do. So yeah, it'd be nice to have a physical copy of these cards, certainly, but it's not reasonable either. It would cost way too much money. I don't know if it really creates any kind of market. If there are a whole bunch of collectible card games that do print physical cards and they kind of fail miserably. And with that, that's all the vials I had, and clearly had I not just crafted one of all of the new expansion, there is a long list here of things, and these are just the bronzes that I could have crafted otherwise to try and reduce the amount of grayed out images. Not that it probably matters too much. Yeah, and I kind of desperately want to be able to trade out those temporary cards and get back some temporary gems, but it's not going to happen. As far as I know, there's just no system towards it. And let's see, if we were to really just look at all cards, you're talking 173 pages here. And there's a massive amount of cards that either I have a temporary version of, or I have only one of. Of course, this also includes many, many expansions that aren't playable in rotation, which clearly, in opening these new packs, we have not shifted over to being playable in rotation, really. Even though I do tend to jump towards rotation far off. No, I tend to jump to unlimited, and clearly I'm not really playable in unlimited. So yeah. In all honesty, though, if I was to throw money at this, I feel like I'd almost certainly regret it very quickly, because I still am sitting on the second dinner Marvel card game. Whenever that comes out, I feel like that still has a high chance of being super successful. There could be a case at this point where the delays may kill enthusiasm for it, or it gets canceled in particular just because the most recent Marvel game didn't sell particularly well, or it gets canceled because Disney just is very, very broke. Although I don't know why Disney licensing out Marvel would be a bad financial decision for them. It'd almost certainly make them money. But yeah, I could see enthusiasm for Marvel somewhat dying down if there's too many delays between Marvel movies coming out, or if all the Marvel movies are coming out but not in theaters because theaters are just dead. Maybe that would affect the Marvel second dinner card game, but I don't really believe that that's going to be the case. I feel like the worst case scenario is that it's just a bad game in general and nobody plays it because it's laden with microtransactions, or just not, it just does not have a good free to play experience, which would be a huge mistake, certainly, because any Marvel card game, you're going to have a higher than average free to play player base of kids that you would want to bring in, and you would want to try and slowly gain the affection of that player base and convince them to eventually convert into paying customers later on. I almost certainly wasted vials in the method that I used here. Almost certainly. But whatever. I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. There's still a ridiculous amount of stuff here. And this still is not a very good system either. It's like, you don't really get a nice image of any of the characters. If you'd, like, for instance, you want to see this character, you have to click here. You really want to see this character, you have to click a second time. Feels like there should be a way that I could mouse wheel at this point and just look at the art. But there isn't, and you can't really mouse wheel at this point, but you can click that. But even if you were to go through this system and click something like that, and then click this, but then it's another click to get back here, and another click to click that. I basically want to make a script at that point to just go through this and do that. You probably could just do this. Nope, you would have to go here, and then here, and then here. So it's a little bit different, where you can click just anywhere on the screen, but it's definitely not a good system. Take note also, when you go this way, it's no flip animation because it's already loaded into RAM. When you go this way, it is a flip animation because it's not been loaded into RAM. They're slowing it down, which I wouldn't be surprised with a little bit better programming if my graphics card, which is hugely overpowered for playing a collectible card game like this, could easily have preloaded all of this image and not done that. And apparently it only keeps just the one that you were last on, which if you're gonna do it that way, then it should just do the flip animation here too, because you're not really optimizing people's time by much. It does make a lot of sense though for me to spend some extra time and delete everything that's not an animated version of a card, if that's the way it's gonna be. Let's see, if we had something like this: temporary cards can't be liquefied, temporary cards can't be turned into animated versions, apparently. See, that would be the real trick, is if you could turn temporary cards into animated versions. Alright, let's see. Yeah, that certainly would take a lot of time though. $18 more pages still. Just a ton of stuff going on here. Hmm. 9 pages still. You can definitely see why I don't bother to show off all the cards. It just doesn't work. Also, it just becomes this big visual mess. It's like, you're not going to be able to remember that I had 3 copies of this card per se, amongst all of that. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to find the legendary that I have in the collection. Like, let's go all the way to the end here. And what we'll want to look for is probably something that we play a lot, if we can recognize that, and probably something that's very pretty, because there's no point in getting an animated card that's not. So like this here. Can't do that. Can't do that. So if we were going to shift this to an animated. Okay. Cool. Cool. But is there really any reason to go any further down that direction? Or just to sit on Or is it better just to sit on the cards? See, like, I have 3 of these. I didn't think you could even have 3 cards. Liquefy extras. No, apparently 3 cards is the amount that you can have. And it's not like any of these cards, if they were animated, that they give you a completely different image. They don't even really show you what you would get. So you would be hard pressed to even know which card's really animated. You really wanted animated until you saw somebody else do it. So yeah, it's better, I think, just to sit on those seer orbs since they are so extremely rare. But I felt like there would have been... Let's see, here we've got a private match that we should have been doing this whole time. Felt like there would have been an achievement somewhere here that would have said use a seer orb once. But apparently not. It's like battle 8 players in private matches. Okay. That's pretty much it. And as far as battle pass missions, the battle pass is season 2 now. Purchase the premium pass and you get these characters and these cards. So, yeah. Otherwise, you're just going to get an emblem and a card back. Well, actually, seems like they might be a little bit more generous this time in Season 2. I had said before, I had hoped that Battle Passes for this game would fail miserably and they would abandon it. And I feel like they didn't do that, but they certainly seem to be less emphasizing that. And then if you were to hit buy here, can you buy this with actual gems, or will that pop up a screen? Let's come over here on the second screen for a moment. Nope, I cannot do that, can I? So I'll have to investigate that on my own time. Meanwhile, the mission that I wasn't paying attention. Treasure Trove of Rupees event without quitting. Play 1. Meanwhile, do we want to place a winner 1 private match? Sure. Because I bet I don't get into a private match at all. Multiplayer. Private. Join private match. Can't do it. So... create a private match. Is it a regular format? Rotation. Single match. Create match. And so, like, if anybody's watching, they can play me here, but almost certainly I would have to invite people and get on to the private match server. So while I do that, do we have anything else to talk about? So what is the server? It's a Discord server, yeah. So, let's see, Discord is wasting my time. And where are we? We are private match section. Okay. So let's try this. While we're here, join a match and 8 5, 2, 4, 2. Select deck. And here we go. So this person says they're passing, which is great, which means I can just try out this deck. And as long as I move fairly quickly, I imagine they won't get upset with me.
What's the matter? Petrified already?
And see, almost certainly there is a secondary special challenge after winning one game, where it's going to be play 2 games and then play 3 games and then play 4 games. This. So we're gonna have to look at the cards somewhat interesting. Let's see. Hurt ourselves, I guess. That's what we're constantly gonna do here. Meanwhile, TechRaptor has an article here. A lost Game Boy peripheral called the Work Boy has been found after 28 years. Although, in all truthfulness, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody made something brand new like this that worked with a Game Boy and did the same thing. It's a little weird that this seems to work completely without a cartridge in it at all. Cancelled but brought together long at last. So yeah, there was all kinds of weird Game Boy peripherals. I don't know if there's any major bit of information to take from this. It clearly looks like it was just a keyboard designed to be like a word processor back in the ancient times, when having a computer and a word processor where you might be able to type anything in was super expensive and arguably not necessary. So there was certainly some weirdness, I would say, going on with gadgets, and gadgets in particular trying to use the, at the time, more established computing of a Game Boy than using internal chips. There were also devices that did not connect to anything else. And see, inherently that is what this problem is the Game Boy printer almost certainly came out a decade after this came out. So there would have been no way to get this text that's being typed off. There's like probably no adapters, and there would have been no memory cards or anything to save things to. So you literally are just typing it to your Game Boy to then be able to read it / retype it later on into some other device. Like, there we go. So do I have another daily quest now, or is that it? Nope, that's it. Okay. So that makes that easier for me, certainly. I definitely had a project when I was younger. And this was a stupid project, certainly, in retrospect. It kind of made sense at the time, and it really just goes to show how time changes perspective a lot. Where there was a technical book that had a lot of things that I felt like were important technical bits of information. Things like the ASCII chart, as far as these are the binary codes to type in certain symbols in text for programming, and these are the standards and the wirings for the wires being used on computers. It was called something along the line of the Computer Technician's Pocket Handbook. It was a really small book and it was really cool. And I was trying to type it into a Pocket PC, and just like scanners basically didn't exist at the time of this. And even if a scanner did work, I probably didn't have one, and certainly an optical character recognition software wouldn't have existed at the time. And the general idea of an ebook didn't really exist at the time, which has long since just replaced any possible bit of legitimacy here. I guess I need to play Runecraft today for what I was doing. And in a lot of ways, I was probably just wasting time, because I was doing a lot of this when I was in school, and as such, I was probably just trying to keep myself busy, for lack of a better term. So we just need to replace a couple cards, I guess. But yeah, I was definitely trying to copy it into a Pocket PC, as if the Pocket PC was what cell phones were going to be in the future. Even having a Pocket PC was insanely crazy. I will also certainly mention that, because it was a super expensive computer that was also super fragile, like way more breakable, 4 or 5 times more breakable than a first generation cell phone. But the Pocket PC, at least in that case, did have the ability to copy to Windows, so there is something to that. But that's pretty much all I could say about it. Good. And I, of course, didn't fully finish that project, and have long since lost any copies of those files, and pretty much any files that I've had from those times. And certainly that was not really worth it. But I really didn't have anything else to do with my life at the time either. It was literally either do what I wanted to do, or sit bored in a classroom and do what the teachers wanted, and I certainly wasn't going to do that in most cases. That was out of the question. And it probably was a good experiment in perseverance and just working on a large, long scale project. But honestly, I could easily emulate it. And the weirder thing there is, I thought all this information was going to be very useful, and it really isn't, because the truth is, for technology in particular, a lot of the low-level old information is not particularly useful. Like, knowing the ASCII charts and the 255 characters that an ASCII formatted text file can display is not useful at all. You could easily Google it at any point now, and you wouldn't Google it, though, because you would simply look up Unicode for specific symbols instead, because Unicode has expanded backwards compatible wise with ASCII, so that there are I wouldn't be surprised if we're up to 64-bit style of characters for Unicode if we need it, although I wouldn't be surprised also if they just went to 32-bit and stayed there, because 32-bit I still think is like 2 billion different characters, and emojis are the only thing we're getting created to fill in those that 32-bit namespace as it is. But certainly in the 80s, that's where everything is. Everybody was getting gadgets, and computers were the big hot thing, and it really does seem like the whole system was fairly fairly crazy, and definitely pushed and motivated by a 80s era embracement of capitalism and consumerism and greed that people still have yet to realize was a bad move, and like advertisements and gadgets and things. It's one of the reasons why I feel like Toys R Us going out of business, and potentially just toy stores being out of business in general, opens up this new generation to not be as obsessed with consumerism, and certainly I am not an exception there. I was deep into the embraces of consumerism.
This is a work of art.
Let's see. But Game Boy gadgets in particular are just really weird for their way they are, and for how useless they are, because they're not interconnected. Even now, if you were to make a gadget that worked with the Switch in some obscure and weird way, it really wouldn't make a lot of sense, because you wouldn't be able to connect to some internet server with it, almost certainly.
The earth rains from above.
Alright. Deal 4 damage. Why could I not do an Earthright there? I thought an Earth Sigil can be used to activate an Earthright. I must have not had enough mana. Interesting. Okay.
Mana, come forth. The earth will trample you. Earthen assault.
Is a work of art.
This guy's wrecking me. Here we have a game on Steam called Toxic Aim Trainer. It's $4.99. Anything that's an aim trainer is not particularly great. What's weird here is this seems like this isn't really even an aim trainer by the looks of it, because I'm not seeing any shooting at all. It seems like it's just kind of weird art with boxes, so maybe they're supposed to be distracting images while you click on boxes. Like, yeah, this does not look like a real aim trainer at all. Not that you should buy aim trainers. Next, we have a game on Steam called Beat the Moles. I'm going to try and rush here. The sad thing here is at 59 cents, English full audio, this probably is one of the best whack-a-mole games I've seen on Steam. So I'm going to put it on the follow list. And it doesn't look good by any means. It's a little polygonal, but oddly, it's kind of the best I've seen so far. I think inherently you run into the problem that the whack-a-mole concept of a game does not make sense in a digital world. It only makes sense when you are actually physically doing it in an arcade, which ever increasingly you're unlikely to actually do that. Let's see. Okay. This. And then this. And then this. And then
This match is mine.
Interesting. See, next we have a game on Steam called Sid Classic, which looks like it's some kind of cell phone game being ported to Steam, where you collect what looks like gacha anime girls. The actual gameplay seems to be fairly generic. Now, when you look at this video, this looks way, way better animated than what the actual game is, and that is certainly an increasing danger for cell phone games in particular, is that they are making this, they hire a third-party company to promote their game, and then they put very little effort into it. We haven't seen a ton of gacha games so far actually make it to Steam, and this definitely is one of the anime waifu ones. It's early access, it's free to play, but it doesn't have in-app purchases for sure, and it seems to support Chinese over Japanese, so I'd suspect it might be a Chinese mobile game. I'm going to put a follow on this, not because I actually think it would make it to the wish list by any means, but because I think it would be nice to particularly see what happens there.
Embrace your vast potential.
Okay.
You don't stand a chance.
Learn to covet on a greater scale.
Didn't even turn if there are at least 2 sigils. Deal 3 damage to all people.
Now this is a work of
Feel the emptiness.
You leave a lot to be desired. Opportunities
There we go.
abound.
So I'm just filling my collection with our sigils, which that strategy did not get me very close to a victory. And I don't know if that's because I just played poorly or if that's because this deck is literally just not going to win. This would be really one of those types of decks that would work really well if we got daily quests that said we needed to play a certain number of amulets, but we don't have daily quests like that in Shadowverse. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Isekai Reincarnation of a New World. Isekai is Japanese for another world. It's a genre. This is just an RPG maker. I suppose if you've never seen Isekai spelled, that's how they spell it in English letters. This game is $3.99 in English only. Calling your game just Isekai is like calling your game Adventure. So that's a really low effort title, even if you're using a different language's word. TechRaptor has an article here. A fan recreates Breath of the Wild Hyrule in Minecraft, which, well, that might be nice and all, and I don't think that really is going to recreate the aspects of Breath of the Wild that are the more important and interesting things, certainly. Nobody's really going to care if it looks like the world of Hyrule when it doesn't play like the world of Hyrule, and you don't have the same gameplay mechanics. If anything, I think that there's an argument that even Breath of the Wild doesn't really play like the other Zelda games, so I wouldn't be surprised if I played it and did have a slight discomfort with the way it played itself out. And
serve in hopes of a better tomorrow.
let's see. Rapid fire. So I played those 2 cards in the wrong order. I should have played this first, then this. And probably should have waited on that, actually. See, so now we've got nothing.
Do not seek what is not there.
There we go. See, this is the annoying card that never dies. So now we gotta just figure out a way to win before he destroys my card that I just copied, which inherently having the ability to copy somebody else's strategy is very, very nice. Next we have a game on Steam here called Scoot, which is just a low effort scooter game. I think there probably is room for a scooter game out there, but it probably just needs to be a different mode in a AAA skating game. I also have to really question if there's any real tricks that you do that are super different from what you would do if you're just skating, and scooting probably is looked down upon people compared to scooters. So yeah. What else can we do? Do this. And then do this. And then do this.
The earth rains from above.
And then evolve.
Mana, come forth. The earth will trample earth in assault.
And then hit that, I guess.
Rusty horseshoe.
Yeah, I don't think Scoot makes sense as a game. I don't think I can make it to the follow list. Next we have a game on Steam here called Lasertron, which is just Arcanoid clone. $3.74, English only.
Embraced by the earth. Do not seek what is not there.
Ticker has an article here. These, I suppose this is supposed to be San Paulo, not Sal, S-A-N chord, because I've never heard of a Sao Paulo. Maybe I'm wrong there. Rules that Sony can't block PlayStation 5 consoles over PlayStation Plus collection sales. The Court of Justice of Sao Paulo, it says it again, ruled that Sony must unlock PlayStation 5 consoles it locked over the sale of the PlayStation Plus collection eligible accounts. Users have been creating PS5 accounts with access to the collection, then selling access to those accounts to PlayStation 5 for gamers. This is odd because I haven't heard anything about it, and I don't really know what's going on with that either. You know, it's like what's so valuable around the PlayStation Plus collection? Just gonna do this, then do this, and then I guess we can evolve this.
This match is mine.
Then I guess I'll just end the turn there. So it says right now it's possible for PlayStation 5 users and PS4 users to be logged into the same PlayStation Network account simultaneously. This has led to some PlayStation 5 users to create accounts with access to PlayStation Plus. Okay, PlayStation Plus is the Xbox Games Pass equivalent, and thus the new PlayStation Plus collection library of PlayStation 4 back catalog games, and then sell access to those accounts to PS4 users for a nominal fee. Which, inherently, this sounds like this is capitalism at work, and Sony wanted only big corporate Sony to be able to make money, whereas any enterprising PlayStation user, they wanted to lock down and screw, which inherently that is what happens a lot, is that any possible thought anybody can have to try to make any money short of just being a wage slave for some big corporation, or perhaps being abused for some small indie company, is so incredibly locked down that honestly I wouldn't be surprised if people went back to being highwaymen at this point. And inherently that is some perspective to take from the old days of pirates and highwaymen in particular, is that it wasn't just that people were bad and they decided that they were going to rob rich people or rob other countries' ships. It was literally, there was no opportunity to have any kind of quote unquote honest work or success at all. Like, certainly right now a great example of that is it seemingly is impossible for any kind of new bank to be formed if it was going to do banking around Bitcoin, for many different laws, rules, and patents around the process of converting Bitcoin into real world money. It also seemingly is impossible to form just any kind of competitive bank at all, because there's so many trade-offs and agreements and backdoor agreements from big banks to not really do business with new upstart big small banks. As far as the credit card part of that, which is the big part about that, is that PayPal has been the only thing that's even become close to be a competitor to things like American Express, Visa, and MasterCard.
Don't underestimate me.
So is there anything more that needs does this really mean anything more than what I just said, though? No, I don't think so. And I'm Sao Paulo. Ah, I see why I've never recognized Sao Paulo. Let's see. Because it's not in America, it's in Brazil. Sao Paulo is a municipality in Brazil. Okay, so in Brazil, which, take what I just said and apply it to Brazil, and it's just 100 times more accurate. Like, people in Brazil, literally, that, arguably whose fault it is, I won't get into, but it seems to me like Brazil is probably a failed nation state, and it's incredibly broken and needs massive amounts of assistance if it's ever going to be able to otherwise just be a incredibly impoverished country. But yeah, there's undoubtedly, I will fully admit, there are also scammers in Brazil, desperate people. We see that as far as games that get released that support the Brazilian language, as how they kind of constantly seem a little shady. But, you know, I can't really blame a lot of them either. Because it's hardly first country that is just so economically depressed that a lot of people's only form of making any money is through scamming. Like, let's point out that India and India in particular has been fairly consistent about running scams through call centers and trying to scam people. And when you look at like India, and particularly the less urban parts of India, that the impoverishment is massive. Of course, you could also look at it on the other side. I wouldn't be surprised if the Brazilian government just kind of does not care one bit about Sony as a Japanese company. I wouldn't be surprised if they look at Sony as maybe even a American company inaccurately there. But I mean, I could see, since it is a national company, I could see certainly that idea play out too, that people would just say it's a international Western company. Right, do we want to evolve? No, we can't evolve. So for us to play this, let's end the turn. Let's keep on going with the news. I got distracted editing out the way Wikipedia looks. Yeah, if anything needs an ad blocker, Wikipedia is probably one of the best examples of it. Speaking of ad blocking, this isn't video game related, but the AMP standard that Google pushed for a short time there, and then apparently everybody hated it. I kind of like the concept of AMP, but because Google was doing it, nobody really embraced it. That is no longer getting promoted status on Google results. So it seems like more and more we are going to probably just get the right results on Google results, whether or not those results are full of ads and slow loading pages, which that was the idea of AMP, is that you could have ads, but they had to be within a limited collection of Google approved ads, and the limited collection of Google approved ads pretty much had to be first party ads with no JavaScript and no other things, and the pages needed to just load really fast. And that's not a bad thought, certainly. But yeah, it seems like that's probably going to be as dead as ever. AMP pages tended to be all text with no imagery, so they were really targeted towards like mobile phone browsers just looking for an answer and nothing else, and at a certain point you run the danger of just becoming incomplete with the data you're presenting to make an AMP page for Google optimization instead of being better. And particularly when I'm looking up computer programming and technical things, incomplete information, it's not usually helpful. Lots of things are not usually helpful, but yeah, you don't want incompleteness. Let's see, moving on, we have a TechRaptor article going over the December Humble Choice listings. So it's Overcooked 2, plus Too Many Cooks, plus Surf and Turf pack. And then Children of Morta, which I keep wanting to play that. And it's a long list of games. A game called One Step from Eden, which is not a game I recognize. Oh yeah, this is basically a card game with positional locations. There's another one I wanted to play. The Beast Inside, not super interested in that. Indivisible is a weird one because of all the controversy around it. This is almost certainly the last time we'll see Indivisible on any Humble Bundle listings. And yeah, I still would totally be willing to play Indivisible. That whole story of the main guy being a jerk versus the main guy being a jerk and somebody was trying to steal his company from out from under him, and he basically had to fire or chose to fire, take your pick one way or another. All of his employees. Because all of his employees were like revolting against him. So yeah. Then next we have Shining Resonance Refrain, which is a JRPG. You don't get too many of these. And then Ziwi the Argus Adventure, which is an RPG that's a little bit more colorful. This art style, frankly, might push me through playing a game like this. It doesn't seem like it's a turn-based game. And then here we have Ziwi the Iliard Invasion. Now, when you do the humble choice, you get all the games, I think. I don't think you have to actually pick. So the choice, I think, is oddly inaccurate. Tabletop Playground, another game I'd like to get, and it's just never on sale. And then Frog Detective 1 and 2. Then a game called Still There. Let's see if we can figure out what this is. Say, person stuck in space, apparently. Then a game called Struggling, which I don't recognize. It definitely looks weird. It kind of feels like it's a psycho collection of challenges with wonky physics. Like a Getting Over It with Benet Foddy, but done with a more singular theme visually. Path of Giants. Don't recognize this. I feel like some of these games may just have never come to Steam. And also some of these definitely feel like they are games that they feel like games that are potentially newer but not top tier games. Things like The Corridor, for instance, makes a lot of sense since apparently Humble Originals made it. Alright, well, that is that. I don't think there's much else to say there. Every play spell. Do 1 damage to all enemies.
Lightning storm.
Different colors, same great taste.
There we go. Next we have a game on Steam called Burn the Witch, which looks to me like it's probably a bit of an asset flip game. Doesn't feel like there's enough gameplay here to really make sense. Seems like they've just It's early access. It's $14.99. It's English only. I just don't see enough game there. Right. Let's go ahead and do this.
So sweet, you'll get cavities.
And then do this.
So sweet, you'll get cavities.
Then hit that.
I'll fry you
And
to a
hit
crisp.
that.
My lord.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Battle Bears, which is just a low effort asset flip, seeming tower defense shooter game for $2.99. English, allegedly full audio.
Sweet enough for you.
Took me
Sweet enough for you.
This is great.
Took me a while, but finally got a victory. I'm a little surprised that it was that easy, actually. But I imagine there probably are enough people just trying out new decks at the moment that there are probably a lot of people just straight up not gonna win. TechRaptor has this article we've already talked about, but Galgun returns. Xbox release has been canceled. Now, in some of the trailers, I saw the new trailers kind of promising and being described as even more risque than the original Galgun. So perhaps in pushing it further, that was a problem, because I feel like Galgun 1 was they was on Xbox, so it's a little bit surprising that Microsoft is going this way. It's certainly a case that if I ever got a fantasy job where I was the person in charge of making Japan embrace Xboxes and actually buy them, I would be livid and calling the Redmond office and say, who made this negotiation, who canceled this game, because this is the exact sort of negative PR that will convince hundreds upon thousands of Japanese fanboys, otakus, to never, ever, ever buy a Microsoft product. It's not just that you're losing out on the sales of Galgun returns. It's that you are losing the confidence of the Japanese audience, of which a decent percentage of gamers, Japanese gamers, are going to care at least that these games are not being supported, being censored, however you want to take it. I think censored probably is the right way to describe it. And inherently, the problem with a story like this, excuse me as I take a drink. The problem with something like this is that I forget what I was going to say. I don't know what Microsoft is thinking there. Looking here, it does seem to say that the original game came out in 2011 for Japan on the 360. PlayStation 3 version came out in 2012. The original game was never released in the West, so this remake is the first chance for Western players to have experienced it without importing or emulation. However, the sequel, Galgun Double Peace, did find its way to the West in 2016 on PS4, Vita, and PC. So the original Galgun game literally, I guess, does not exist. Let's see. In the tweet, the Inti creators say they want to stay true to the spirit of the original Galgun game, which definitely seems like they are saying censorship. I don't know how you call that anything else. Tech Raptor says it sounds like Microsoft wanted to make changes to the game, which is rather heavy on fan service that they weren't willing to make. In that case, it seems Valve and Nintendo haven't asked for the same changes. Of course, the other problem with this is this may just be the first domino. Like, it may come back that Valve and Nintendo do demand changes now that Microsoft does demand changes, and all of a sudden we've got a situation where the game potentially doesn't even come out at all. Yeah, but I really just don't know what Microsoft would be thinking in something like that, unless there's just something incredibly objectionable in it, and we'll never get that bit of information. That, like, and frankly, I don't even know what could be incredibly objectionable. I just watched a movie review on YouTube talking about the movie Doctor Sleep that came out, about a year and a half ago, I would say. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, actually. And in the middle of Doctor Sleep, there's this whole section, that scene that I didn't even know about, where the bad guys are brutally, slowly torturing and killing a young child. And that's a live actor who is playing out the scene, and while these adult bad guys are torturing and killing him. And it's like, yeah, these kinds of depictions have been acceptable in art in any other form, and nobody's pushed for any real censorship. Even the Cuties movie, which arguably should have been censored, that did not come back with any major people making the argument for actual censorship. Only a few particularly conservative politicians push that idea, and it seemingly has gone nowhere. And use a second fourth, deal 1 damage if it's third fourth. Okay. Yeah, I just don't know if Microsoft wants to be in the Japanese market, they gotta embrace Japanese games, whatever they are. In the same way that if you wanted to be in the Chinese market, you've got to embrace the fact that a lot of Chinese games are based on the Romance of the Three Kingdoms series and Chinese culture. The idea that you think that Microsoft acts like it can come in and convince the Japanese market to play Western games exclusively, and that they can be the curator of content, is ridiculous. Sadly, unfortunately, in a lot of scenarios, that's probably the case. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of TV stations and cable providers who have been for decades capable of being the tastemakers for people. Like, and we've certainly seen that where certain channels, like G4 is kind of a great example as far as games, that DirecTV, I don't think ever had G4. And certainly that there's probably a ton of small indie game like UHF channels that in previous decades would have loved to have been broadcast channels, and Dish and DirecTV and Comcast and all of those cable providers probably said, no, we're never going to support this channel. That whatever content this provider is making is not what we're interested in. But yeah, if I was theoretically, just had a couple millions of dollars to make a new console, I would totally make a new console right now. This is the best time probably in the past 25 years to think about making a competitor console in Japan. And if you launched something, some kind of console in Japan, you could potentially then spread it to the West and the rest of the world. Honestly, since there's been shortages for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox Series isn't inherently the best supplied at the moment either, a third, fourth tier console being launched right now would be your best opportunity. You'd still probably fail, I'll grant you that, but I don't know. At a certain point, you almost would just want to start by being a PC developer, making like very gaming focused PCs and trying to sell that. But yeah, if Valve particularly was behind it, if Valve said that we're going to come out with a console and we're going to just do it the old-fashioned way and we're not going to do anything weird, that'd be very interesting. Particularly if Valve came out with a console that says this actually works with our VR on the medium settings and you can play Half-Life Alyx with it. There's definitely a thought there. Of course, I really wouldn't trust Valve to be the console creator that also embraced Japanese games, as it were. Anyways, moving on, since that's really just got me riled up. Here we have a game called The Dream of Shadowlands, Episode 1. Now, this is an oddly animated, but I kind of like this animation style of the main girl, but then the rest of it looks very weird. Like, it seems like somebody here can actually draw, but then they've gone particularly weird with everything you see. And then we see that there's some puzzles, and there's some wandering around, and there's some talk. And it feels very much like they're doing a twisted Undertale more than anything else. First episode is free, English full audio. I'm gonna put this on the follow list just because I'd like to see if people embrace it. This definitely feels like something that would have been drawn in the 80s, and perhaps I have a unrealistic nostalgia for that. I would also say the fashion on this is a little weird, because having basically a overshirt that splits in the middle with a bow and just hangs over boobs is kind of weird. And then if you got rid of it, then she'd just have a pure black shirt and then a yellow matching skirt and then knee-high, thigh-high socks. And I think there's room for more color, and you see more variety certainly with this character and her appearance. So yeah, that is a weird appearance. See, next we have a game on Steam called Noble Escape, which seems to be an escape the room puzzle game. They're calling it ultimate story-based puzzle escape room game out there. It's early access. It's $4.49. This is definitely not the kind of game that should be in early access. It doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't look like the game actually is anything at all. So I'm going to definitely not play that. Okay, what can we do?
Different colors,
Do this.
same great taste.
And then do this. And then evolve.
This match is mine.
I have no plans to have a sip.
Go ahead and attack that.
You found me out.
Should have been quicker.
There we go. Next, we have a game on Steam called Choco Pixel D, which looks like it's nothing. $1.19. 100 achievements. Clearly, it's an achievement game.
All ends here.
Second wind blows.
Let's see. Next, we have a game called Ortugul Ghazi,
Great.
How did I lose?
which looks like it's an asset flip fantasy game. Witcher 3 clone, for lack of a better description. Although, frankly, I wouldn't want to start using the phrase Witcher 3 clones on games that look just this terrible. You just would need more trees and more visual aspects and more polish. English, Arabic, Russian, and Turkish. What are our missions? Do we really need another Runecraft victory? Yeah, we need 2 more Runecraft victories, so we're kind of stuck with that. Where I'd prefer to be playing the new deck that we just bought. Here we have a game on Steam called Jane Angel 2 Fallen Heaven. This is from HH Games. It's a hidden object game. Seems like it goes in a couple different places though. Seems like sometimes you're in a medieval fantasy world,
Underestimate me.
and sometimes you're in the real world in a hospital. $6.29 English and German. At those prices, that is a much better deal than the $12.99 Big Fish Games offers. I have to say that almost every time, but it is also still probably not that good of a deal. Next, we have a game on Steam called Arcane Eyes. Let's see, we're at the beginning of the end. I can see the ending now, which this is just a jigsaw puzzle game with some anime girls that looks like there might be only 3 images in the entire game. $1.19 English, allegedly full audio. I need to really kick myself in the butt to make sure that after today's stream, I start playing some game, or at the very least start scheduling some videos and stop working on my server. There's just so much work on that that's going to just take forever anyways. I need to move forward and ensure success or progress is actually made. Otherwise, I'm going to come back this Friday and say I still haven't accomplished anything for my YouTube channel. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Kokoro Clover Part 2, which I think Kokoro is heart, as in the organ, as compared to Doki Doki, which is the sound effect of a heart beating. And this feels like this might be part of the Clover series. And it seems like it's all over the place as far as an RPG game. May be good, may be bad. I feel like English won't be supported though. $7.19 Japanese only, yeah. Which that pretty much solves that problem, doesn't it? Yeah, I probably don't have as much news as I could have had because I haven't been looking at new games that have come out. So anything that came out around Christmas is highly likely to be overlooked. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Torqued Up Legends, where it's a racing game which looks a lot like a bunch of other racing games where you can also paint a car, which I never felt like that was a important aspect to racing games. $11.99. This is visually polished enough, I think, to deserve a follow. I feel like I probably am going to have to do a follow list cleanup quicker than I should or normally would. Let's do this. And then do this. Then end the turn. Next we have a game on Steam here called Pixel Piano, which just looks like it's a piano. It does not look good at all. 59 cents, English only. In particular, if you were going to try and test out your piano skills, and you had like a touchscreen or a tablet and you were installing this via Windows on a touchscreen computer, it still does not look visually good enough for that aspect. Almost certainly you could find a dozen better games, better looking piano emulators. Next we have a game on Steam here called Bolt Break, which seems to just be an asset flip experiment. The idea of running around and having electrical powers is not a bad idea by any means. There's an entire game around that or two that were super successful. The problem is the polish here. This is a vertical slice at best, not an actual game. $3.99 English, and then English for the interface, and then allegedly full audio for every other language they could think of. One more hope for a quick disconnect victory is pretty much all I can hope for. Next we have a game on Steam called Desert Mystery, which looks like an asset flip first-person shooter with barely any enemies for 99 cents. Being compared to Battlefront 2. Gamatsu has an article here. Paradigm Paradox launches in 2021 in Japan. A gender reversal themed heroes and villains otome as a young maiden visual novel. Gender reversal. A world where mankind can only live in isolated colonies. Yeah, I don't know how this really would play out as a story. Trying to read that description didn't really help me much. I imagine what this is going to be is you're going to run into a story like this, since it's an otome story, is that you're going to run into a lot of girls that the main protagonist, female protagonist, becomes comfortable with, and then they turn into guys and the relationship progresses to a more straight relationship. Either that or the main protagonist gets turned into a male and then develops all of these relationships, and then at the end she turns back into a female. Or maybe they go even wilder than that. But I wouldn't expect too much craziness there. Like, there have been not a ton, but a few cases of non-cisgendered characters or non-straight relationships in Japanese romance visual novels, but not a lot. Like, it still is very much the Japanese culture of not admitting or accepting that homosexuality exists in Japan. Japanese love to say they were all exactly the same, and the idea that somebody could be different is definitely not encouraged. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Freaky Clown Town Mystery, which seems to be some... I wouldn't even really call it an asset flip game. It actually does look fairly polished, where kids get kidnapped by a freaky clown, and then in what looks like an escape the room style cell phone adventure. You try to escape. With puzzles. It's free to play with a third-party end-user license agreement. And it's single player only. I want to put this on the follow list to see if anybody bothers to ever play it, but I also don't know what you're doing with a product like that. It does seem like you're kind of just wasting everybody's time.
Is that a human?
Mana, come forth.
I probably shouldn't have evolved there.
Sticking my head in the clouds.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Spartan Firefight, which seems like it's heavily inspired by Halo, which I imagine this is not an official Halo game, and it definitely looks like a 2D variation on a Halo games. From the creator of Spartan Runner, which I've never heard of. $2.99. Yeah, I'm not that big of a fan that I'd want to play a fan game based on Halo. Okay. What can we do? We could do this. And we can do this.
Golly, it's chilly here.
And just end the turn. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam here called Cosmic Disco, which looks like it is some asset flips space people coming out of a black hole in some kind of VR dual stick shooter game. Looks like a visual mess. It's $12.74 and a bunch of language supported. Yeah, I don't see anything here that interests me. Let's see. TubeBuddy, which I do follow, retweeted Mr. Bees, who I don't follow, who says he is hiring between his main channel, gaming, shorts, reaction, and the Beast philanthropy, can't pronounce that word, philanthropy channel, about to launch. I'm going to need help with strategy. If you love data analytics and YouTube, apply below. Only apply if you're obsessed with YouTube. Which, yeah, I feel like inherently location would probably be a factor in a job like that. I don't think somebody saying they're obsessed with YouTube and that's it. That's pretty much all they would have to offer to say is likely to get a job like that. Let's see. Let's do this.
You like the cold?
That.
You like
And
the cold?
then that.
I feel
And that.
Got some decent loot.
And that. But yeah, that is an interesting thought, certainly. Actually, let's take a look and see. Because this probably is exactly the type of person that if my channel personally made money, I'd need to hire too. So they're looking for your expertise needs to include video concepts, thumbnail and title generation, video retention strategy and quality assurance, video production strategy and execution, research and analytics, data-driven analytics and programming, the position is full-time. We're probably primarily looking for people with experience in running their own YouTube channel, as it offers an extensive portfolio for us to judge your experience and potential, which I imagine Mr. Beast looking at my YouTube channel would not be impressed at all. Here we go. What's your email? What's your name? Very standard job requirements. Where do you reside? No pull down here. They are just straight up asking where you reside, so they'll probably exclude people. Are you over 18? What's your Discord username? What's your Twitter for contact? Which for contact means nothing. They're definitely going to see your Twitter if they try to contact you. And then please check these that you're good at. Which one's the best? I would be somewhere between 100 and 1,000 subscribers. So which video are you most proud of with a YouTube link? Nope. See, I don't even have one that I'm particularly super proud of. What top 3 YouTubers inspire you the most? Yep. Almost certainly I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Beast hired somebody completely outside of YouTube and probably got more bang for his buck that way. In a weird way, this might be also Mr. Beast is trying to hire somebody to do the job that a lot of the partner companies claimed they would do but never actually did. Here's another artist character that is showing quite a lot of skin considering the way Shadowverse was moving towards censorship. There's still just a lot of visual inconsistency that feels like they probably need to do a full reboot of the game. Take out all the cards that you're not happy with visually and want to censor, and make a Shadowverse for kids called something completely different, and have the same concepts of cards be the same, and just pay twice, pay artists to do 2 different renditions of things. Honestly, I wouldn't be upset if I was playing the adult Shadowverse and then I was getting connected to a bunch of kids playing the kids Shadowverse game, and we just never really realized it, and I was seeing the adult art and they were seeing the kid-friendly art. That's extra work for sure, and something you wouldn't normally see in any other kind of game, but it solves the problem. Moving on, we have a game called Draw and Guess, which seems like it's probably just a whiteboard app so that you can play a simplistic Pictionary type game. I think Pictionary is the game I'm thinking about. $3.99. A whole bunch of languages claiming to have full audio support for each of those languages. See, next we have a game on Steam called Captain Pegleg, which looks like an infinite runner, which oddly does seem like it is visually polished well enough that it would almost interest me in playing it. A platformer game that maybe isn't an infinite runner as much as maybe it is just a platforming game. I don't know. Maybe there's enough here. It almost feels like a Mario Brothers game. $24.89 English and German. I'm going to put this on the follow list just because I want to see if anybody actually pays $25 for this. It doesn't look terrible. If you had told me this was a $7.99 game, I would have thought about purchasing it a lot more, but to give such a high price is kind of ridiculous. Let's see. 1 damage. Let's do that. Then do that. And do that, I guess.
Is that a human?
The resplendent phoenix graces you with her presence.
Lib Retro on Twitter had put out a video of Grand Theft Auto 2, the Dreamcast being played with Flycast, which I think that's probably noteworthy in the fact that the Dreamcast games seem to be slowly working, and DOSBox Pure is getting more enthusiasm around it. Well,
I won't stop singing until there's world peace. Mana, come forth. Warning, there's my guitar gently beats.
Different colors, same great taste.
let's keep on moving. I'm losing momentum here. I'm gonna fall asleep. Frankly, I just woke up too, so there's no good argument for that. I also managed to sleep awkward or something and hurt my shoulder, so yeah, that's another issue. Just constantly injuring yourself as you get older. Here we have a game called Aquila Bird Flight Simulator. We've seen a lot of games like this. This one looks polished enough, but the landscape is kind of lacking. And I don't feel like there's an actual game here. It's 99 cents with some kind of multiplayer. But it does seem like that's all you really do. And the heads-up display when you're flying a bird does not make any sense at all. Let's see.
Different colors, same great taste. Have a sip.
That and that. Next we have a game on Steam called Act, which I assume is Act and not ACT. It seems like it's just a first-person shooter.
Well, I think it tastes great.
Seems like you're robbing a place and maybe you can betray your friends. $2.99. Mini role-play multiplayer game. English and French. Alright. What do we do here? I think we do this. Evolve it to that. Then do that.
Oh, that didn't go so well.
And that. Play this next turn, I can win. Honestly, I may have been able to win if I'd played it this turn. Come to think of it. But regardless, I think we're fine. I think we may have a victory here. Next, we have a game on Steam called Path of Memory, which looks like it is just a single screen Unity game with a color gradient as the background. 84 cents, English full audio, nothing there worth mentioning. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Belling Coins, which looks kind of like a Pac-Man type clone. Yeah, I don't see anything here of interest. 49 cents. If they manage to defeat me in this turn, they've probably won. But if they haven't, then I've probably won. Okay.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Have a sip.
Hit that. And hit that. Didn't quite win. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Famitsu interviewed Japanese creators on 2021 ambitions with an update from 4Gamer. Acquire to announce new titles soon and more. So they talked to Acquire. Keywords rechallenge self-publishing. Atlas was thinking outside the box. Katsuro Ashino says silence. Kazuhisa is carrying out his original intentions. A lot of these people are not recognizable per se. Like Kadokawa Games, I know them. They want to release a new title and 2 remastered titles. A lot of these are just saying do your best, or simplistic equations, versions of that. Let's see. Alright, if we do this, if we do this, it's probably the best move, is that. And 2 damage to an enemy follower. Three damage to an enemy follower.
What do we have here?
How could you avoid my
Do that. Let's see. Koei Tecmo is going to be dealing with the new normal. Let's see. Konami is learning from the past. Ha ha ha. I don't believe that for a second. Side Game says adamant is their keyword. So this is an article I'm going to have to definitely push you to read yourself if you're interested. The Nier, one of the Nier creators is just saying Nier as their main thing. Sega says the creation of a new century. Which I find that questionable. Platinum Games says they're going to do their best. So yeah, there's bits of sentences here telling them that they are going, basically pointing out that they are going to try and do persevere and move forward. The Japanese game creators, the artistic creator people there, which is obvious, frankly. It's not the artistic people that are going to throw in the towel and give up. It's going to be the corporations and the budgeting and the banks and the finance there, particularly knowing how risk-averse business is in Japan. I would not for 1 second be surprised if tons of games just lack in funding. Weirdly, we didn't see any cards with weapons, so how that is supposed to be something, I don't know. Because we definitely didn't get any cards that gave us war-worn weapons or anything like that. But it is, I suppose, slightly reassuring to hear the Japanese actually talking like they are going to try and have an experience here. See, seemingly all of these characters are on the same pirate boat. So they're some kind of pirate group. And yeah, you got this weird guy and this weird girl. And then you got 1, 2, 3 girls, one with ears, and maybe the others have animal ears too. And then you have, well, I assume is a guy behind a mask, and then a guy, and then the guy, and then the girl, and then the girl. So it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio, a 2/3 ratio of female to male, which I'm fine with that. Play one private match during the treasure trove without quitting. So that's now reset. Apparently you're supposed to do this multiple times, probably every day. So I probably should hop on and make sure I do one more private match before I call it quits for today, particularly if I could get a runecraft victory in private. I don't know if that includes private. I don't think it actually does. That'd be great if I could get 2 victories of some sort. That'd be great too, but that's going to take way too much time. Anyways, we have just a few more games. We have one called Color Cube here that is just a box color rolling game from as far as I can tell. It's just not visually interesting enough. 59 cents. Nope to that. Gamatsu has an article here. Arc System Works developed Dungeon Fighter fighting game DNF Duel has been announced, and there's an update to that. Which, okay. Duke Nukem Forever or did not finish Duel. Take your pick. Then once again, this is one of those games where they have a whole bunch of animation that is not in line with what the game actually looks like. And for an Arc System Works fighting game, that's actually particularly odd because the Arc System Works games actually do look very nice. So I wonder if there's something specific about DNF Duel that needed to exist compared to just Arc System Works making their standard game that they make that looks very similar. That seems weird, but it is a spin-off game, so maybe they were just hired to make the spin-off game as a bit of advertisement, and they probably won't support it that much. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Don't Crash the Zombie Game, which just looks like a asset flip zombie first-person shooter for $1.19. Nothing needs to be said more there. Didn't even look at the language. Honestly, I should stop looking at the languages for some of these low-effort games. Here we have a game called Mutant Ops, which seems like it's an asset flip first-person shooter where you're shooting characters loosely similar to Mario games. Some of them definitely look like turtles and bats and things that would have been in Mario games. This is free to play, English only. Next, we have a game on Steam called Stranded, which is just an asset flip survival game. No surprise. $2.84 English only. Yep. No surprise that this close to New Year and Christmas, none of these games are actually worth mentioning. Here we have a game called Memory Note, which looks like a visual novel. Doesn't inherently get rejected at first glance. It's $1.59 English and Russian. Alright, I'll give it a follow. You got a tattooed girl for people who might be interested in that, and there might be something here. I wouldn't be surprised though if this is a kinetic, like no branching choices visual novel that doesn't really go anywhere. And certainly I lose some hope when I see that the exact same publisher put a different visual novel out at the exact same time. And yeah, I don't think I would believe that there's an actual game here. This looks visually unpolished, but it's free, and I guess it is a advertisement for a different game that they apparently have already put out and made. 20 to 25 minutes. It's almost like a New Year's gift, which is an interesting thought, certainly, to put out New Year's gift games on Steam. I don't feel like you should do that. If you're going to do that, it should be like free DLC for people who have purchased the game as a reward for supporting them. Next, we have a game on Steam called May Rescuer, which looks like it's kind of nothing. It's you shoot boxes to get yourself higher to reach a certain platform, I think. It's $1.79, English only, whatever it actually is. I think I may be wrong. Definitely it's not interesting. And let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Intelligence Operation, which might actually be a decent first-person shooter. It looks visually polished enough. $1.79 is a little too cheap though. But I can't reject it just because it's cheap. I don't feel like that would be fair. I'll put this on the follow list and we'll see what people have to say. Particularly if it's a cheap game, somebody's going to review it. And then we have a game called Cryptic, which looks like it is a full text game for $2.54. Certainly when you see 60 cents games that look way better than a full text game at $2, you start to gain some perspective of how undervalued a full text game really has to be, or at least it is in my mind. Let's see. That brings us to the Humble Bundle. They have Linux books by A-Press. Let's see. Accelerated development velocity using Docker. Beginning modern Unix. Hands-on booting. Using administrating Linux. I don't know if any of these books are really that useful. But if you read all of these books, you would learn a lot of things. Like, I haven't dipped my toe as far as Kubernetes here, which they also pronounce K3S and write it that way. Beginning Ubuntu for Windows and Mac users is probably a good one. Introduction to ZFS or ZFS is a good one. Linux containers and virtualizations. This stuff doesn't look terrible. Weird that there's a volume 1 and volume 2 as far as the titles. Now, who knows how terribly written these books are or how accurate their information is going to be. I've never even heard of OpenShift clusters. Foundations of libvirt. I've heard of libvirt, but I couldn't tell you what it was. Sound programming in Linux. I'm not sure you really need that. Practical system programming with C. Not sure you really need that. And then you start going into more specific bits of information. These are all from the same printer. I don't know what GNU Octave is. Windows subsystem for Linux is not even Linux. At that point, that's running Linux-like commands on Windows. Migrating to MariaDB away from MySQL. You may not really need a book for that because they're fairly compatible. The Linux philosophy for system admins is definitely going to be an opinion piece, but it might be useful. A lot of this also seems fairly redundant. And I feel like in a lot of ways you read books if you don't have a computer in front of you, but then you're getting ebooks through Humble Bundle. You're not going to get real books. So none of it really makes sense unless you just really, really need somebody to tell you what to do in programming and system administration. And if you need someone to tell you what to do in programming or system administration, you shouldn't be a programmer or system administrator. That's not the type of person that I think will thrive in that environment. This is not history where you just learn what the facts of what happened and spit it back out. It's not math where there is one right solution and you just memorize the algorithms and spit it back out. IT is an art. it is creating something from nothing and having very little help, and a lot of frustration often comes from that. So if you can't do something or figure out how to do something, then you're not going to have a good time, certainly. Now, books can certainly be a source on how to figure out how to do things, but you're not going to read a book about computer programming and then be an expert about computer programming by the time you've read that book all the way through. In fact, you very possibly are going to be even worse off reading a computer programming book if you haven't actually been doing programming and you don't have it within you to say, this person put a typo here, or this person is wrong, or I don't like the way this is done, I want to do it my own way, even if my own way happens to be bad. A lot of, I think, programming really does come down to understanding it your way and developing a backbone, for lack of a better term, as far as holding your own and fighting with a computer that doesn't want to do the things you're telling it to do, or fighting with end users that don't like the way your computer runs or your program runs. It is not a coincidence that so many IT people don't like to deal with people, don't like to deal with end users, and are rude and abrupt and not particularly the kindest people. Programmers tend not to be, almost certainly, almost never are like kindergarten teachers. Like, we don't abide nonsense. We don't abide gibberish. Yeah, books can only help you so far. I can tell you personally from my my IT classes that I was in, the HTML class, the C++ programming classes, the computer maintenance and repair classes, none of us taught much of anything out of the books. There were books, but I don't think they were even assigned to students, because that's it. And the only one class that pretty much was taught out of a book was my Cisco Certified Networking class, which was taught horribly because it was taught out of a book and nobody understood it. And I think 1 out of 30, maybe 2 out of 30 students in that class passed the Cisco Certified Networking Association test. And the test, certainly to be certified as a Cisco CCNA test, frankly, was not as useful information as you would have thought. It's only good if you're going to work on Cisco equipment and Cisco equipment of the time that you were taught. It definitely did not teach concepts. It definitely didn't teach foundational things that would have grown your IT networking skills. If anything, it was teaching basically just the way Cisco wanted things done, which was different than the way everybody else was potentially doing things. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. We're done. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.